Thank you, Radhika. Thank you, everyone. Radhika, Carlos, everyone who has brought us together, and Friends of Socialist China for that amazing experience that I had. And yes, my first visit to China. So greetings, everyone, and good day, whatever time it is where you are. I'm Margaret Kimberley. I'm executive editor of Black Agenda Report. And as well, I have leadership roles in the Black Alliance for Peace and the United National Anti-War Coalition. But lately, my proudest affiliation is having joined the Friends of Socialist China in its first ever delegation to Beijing, Zhejiang, and Jilin. Our hosts from the China NGO Network for International Exchanges provided our group with a whirlwind of lectures, bilateral discussions, and visits to museums and historic sites. I had a sort of epiphany that I've often had when traveling to nations that we are told we're not supposed to like. I think of myself as being well informed, but whenever I travel abroad, and particularly to socialist countries, I'm reminded how deprived I and most people from the United States are, even if we strive to broaden our knowledge. We're deprived of historical information, and we're propagandized to hate or fear nations which the ruling class labels as adversaries. For example, we're being warned that China is buying up US farmland. Never mind that a variety of Chinese interests own fewer than 1,400 acres in a country with 1.3 billion acres of agricultural land. The total amount of US agricultural land owned by Chinese interests is less than 0.03%. Despite that fact, there are congressional and state laws in place banning or limiting something that isn't even happening, all because of what can only be called war propaganda. It is in that light that travel and to China and study of China is so important. Even if I had ever believed those lies, I would now know that China is self-sufficient in food production. I've seen the extensive farmland with my own eyes. How else could it be in a country with a population of more than 1 billion people, comprising 18% of the world's population? That easily provable fact is one that's never mentioned in the plethora of nonsensical so-called news that we're fed in this nation. When US policy is said to represent the world, the nation with more people than any other is left out of the equation. We have to ask, why is there so much animus against China in the United States? I think racism, as we've seen in the people attempting to troll this meeting, I think racism explains some of that, as the US is driven by notions of white supremacy in so much that it does, as does the US insistence on having what it calls primacy, being in control around the world politically, economically, and militarily. That illusion of control is quite dangerous and can't allow for the free flow of information that it claims to respect. In the case of China, not only do we see a nation outside of the US sphere of influence, but one that excels in so many ways precisely because it is socialist. In a session, one of our sessions led by Chen Lizhu on common features of Chinese modernization and Chinese characteristics, we were told that these were the defining features of Chinese modernization. Modernization of a huge population, common prosperity, material and cultural, ethical advancement, harmony between humanity and nature, and modernization of peaceful development. We were also told that the CPC is a party that keeps its mission and the interests of the people firmly in mind. It's in sharp contrast with some parties who only focus on the result of elections and their own benefits under the multi-party constitutional democracy system, unquote. Common prosperity, that's a foreign concept in the US political system, which openly caters to capitalist interests. Development is the result of whatever the ruling class wants for itself. Any mention of people's needs are a low priority if they are made at all. We see this plainly in this presidential election year, in which neither of the major duopoly parties mentions the people's needs as part of their platforms. With less than 5 months before Election Day, President Biden is trotting out small reforms, which will be helpful to many people, which clearly could have been done earlier in his term. They haven't been done because the people's needs are simply not part of the political agenda. The people's needs are, in fact, antithetical to the political agenda. Modernization is whatever benefits capitalists, and if any benefit accrues to the people, it is totally by accident. Of course, the major root of US animus towards China is socialism. Socialism which it cannot defeat because socialism was won by struggle. In Jilin, we visited a hero city, Saiping, given that title because of the pivotal role it played in 1946 and 1947. Here in the United States, we will soon celebrate what is called Independence Day, a victory of settler colonists bent on expansion, enslavement, and destruction of indigenous peoples. The victory of the People's Republic of China cannot be defeated by the usual means, and that anger and, frankly, jealousy is obvious in US foreign policy and hostility to China. Here, we're constantly told that socialism is a failure and that it doesn't work. Revolutions subjugated by a variety of US subversions are held up as examples of failure, while the great success of China is omitted or delegitimized in some way. I saw a society that works quite well. I didn't see people living on the street as I do here in New York or other major cities. I did see a public park where people gathered to entertain one another that was built to serve senior citizens and what I called a playground for older people. I've never seen such an effort to meet the needs of the elderly in such a simple way here in this country. I live in a country which says that there is no other world possible, that immiseration through debt peonage and low wages and mass incarceration is the best of all possible worlds, and that we should have no expectation of having a different reality. We are told that having a Congress that is a money laundering operation for the ruling class is the best we can expect. Not only did we see amazing infrastructure and beautiful airports and roadways, but we also learned about the cultural history of the People's Republic of China through its film industry, something we aren't even told exists. I felt the need to remind myself of what was happening in the US during our trip to China. There was bipartisan support for a giveaway of $91 billion for the military-industrial complex, including $8 billion to antagonize China through support of Taiwan, a Chinese province. It was surreal watching the Washington clown show from China, while members of Congress stupidly referred to conservative post-Soviet leader Vladimir Putin as a communist KGB thug and a murderous Marxist dictator. China was counseling peace. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz met with Xi Jinping, who repeated that peace talks are the only reasonable solution to the Ukraine crisis. China has offered its services in an effort to end the bloodshed ever since the proxy war began, but it's been rebuffed at every turn. Nations like Germany are firmly under Washington's grip and dare not act as the independent nations they claim to be. China welcomes world leaders without expecting obedience or collaboration in war crimes, but that is simply unacceptable to the US, which demands hegemony at every turn. But hegemony is impossible. China cannot be defeated. It did not strive to create a prosperous society just to allow it to be destroyed by a nation in the midst of a dangerous decline. So yes, there is a new world possible, and it lies outside of the collective West. China is a shining example to people of the world. It is one that, of course, is not without its complications or its contradictions, but it stands apart clearly in providing for people what the nations that are so antagonistic towards it claim to have but fail to do. So I'll just end by thanking the Friends of Socialist China for the amazing opportunity that I was afforded and for putting together this meeting. Thank you. Thank you so very much.